YouTube, how is it going? We are back for another video, and this time it's official. We are in competition prep mode, so I've officially signed up for my first ever bodybuilding competition, which means it's starting a new series of videos, which is going to be me documenting my prep. So at the time of this video, we're roughly 20 weeks out from competition. So we got quite a good lead-in period, and luckily enough for me, we're going to do a little bit of a maintenance phase before we actually start our official cut. So we have a new program that we're hitting, a new training style in a sense, switching up the split. I'm still going to actually be sticking to a 3-day split because I think that that's the most appropriate for me to run in terms of how I structure my sessions and also how my body recovers. But we're actually switching the primary focus to be back, and that means that back will be coming off the back of our off days, so we're getting a full recovery. So we're prioritizing back, the stimulus to the back, as the first session within the split, and then we're going to do a push session the day after that, and then legs. Sometimes we might go legs push depending on how the upper body's feeling, but ultimately that's going to be the split. So today's video is going to be very much back focused. We're trying to get a bigger V-taper, we're trying to get a thicker back, which means we're going to switch up some exercise variations to the stuff that I've posted on in the past. Some of the principles will still be there. Because we are doing a bit more of a maintenance phase, there will be a bit more volume than I'm typically accustomed to, just because we will have a little bit more energy. So want to see if we can get a little bit of a main gain in a sense. So can we create some hypertrophy and get some growth without increasing our weight too much, and hopefully changing some of our body fat percentage and our body composition. So we're gonna basically run this for I think 4 weeks. Before then we'll start a cut at around week 50. So make sure you're tapping in, because this is going to be an interesting prep. I'm going to obviously try and post as many of these videos as I can. I'll be consistent with my training sessions. I don't want it to get too boring, because some of the sessions are going to look identical and things like that. But what I'm going to try and do is talk about some of my training philosophy, some of the scientific principles that are supporting my training, and how I approach training in general during the sessions. So make sure you're tapping in, because you might learn something along the way. If not, tap in and help support me, because from what I've been told in terms of preps, now I've done cuts before and things like that, but never for a specific competition, so I'm locked in. But I've been told that you can get prep brain, and having a support network there is definitely useful. So if there's anybody out there who wants to show their support and love, please do. And hopefully as well, this inspires other people to do prep and start taking bodybuilding seriously if you haven't already, because for me, I'm a little on the older side, if I'm being honest, to be starting my bodybuilding career, but it's never too late. So make sure you start. I've always had a love and admiration for bodybuilding. I've just never really had the time to honestly dedicate that training style, because of working as a professional strength and conditioning coach and working with professional athletes. And you could argue, well, you're in the environment, why wouldn't you train that way? But there was more important goals within my career than focusing on myself as an athlete. Whereas now, I've gone a little bit more over to the private sector, focusing on my own coaching, focusing on my own program, and focusing on my own athletic abilities. So it's going to be a fun and interesting journey. So make sure you tap in. Make sure you hit that subscribe button as well, because these videos are going to be coming daily, and it's going to document all of our prep. So you're going to see the struggles, you're going to see the challenges, and you're also going to see the happy moments as well. And once we get to show day, the competition is there. I'm a highly competitive person, so as my debut comp, I am aiming to try and win. I want to at least place, but the goal is to win this thing. So we're taking this very, very seriously. We're locked in. So hopefully, again, that will inspire you to also lock in, especially through this summer. We're choosing probably the worst time of year in a sense to become locked in and be dialed in. But at the same time, that's going to be the mental challenge. So stick around for the video, and we'll see you when I'm in the gym. All right, so we made it to the gym, which means we are starting with our warm-up and switching things up. Gonna get a nice deep stretch from pullover machine, do a couple of different variations before we get into our main exercise for the day. So get a decent little bit amount of weight on there. So just 10 reps, nice, easy, just again, getting the muscle moving. And I typically have like two principles within the warm-up. We gotta be able to load it. We gotta be able to go through a good range of motion, so a deep stretch, so it facilitates us for our primary exercise. But then also kind of hit some points that you might not be necessarily focusing on in today's session. So we got this extension-based pullover, generally an easier entry requirement in terms of for like the lats and things like that, compared to maybe like a pull down or a pull up. So we can hit this exercise, do it relatively easier, and then go from there. Juice that weight down just a little bit. Shred that. All right. So probably seen on the internet somewhere the Keenan flap exercise, where essentially we're doing kind of a single arm cable adduction. But actually, I think the best way to do the Keenan flap might be in the pullover machine, where we go single arm and we kind of hit more of like the sagittal plane with some extension. So you'll notice that I'm a little bit more side on, and so we're not doing the traditional straight up and down pull down that we would get. And again, this is kind of a variation where, do we necessarily need it? I'm not sure, but I'm just going to throw it in for warm-up anyway to get the lats leveraged. Get some good activation. All right, so that's the first warm-up exercise done. All right, so secondary warm-up is for the primary exercise. So we're going to go with the chest supported T-bar row, some more of a horizontal pull. So this exercise, generally sometimes I'll have it as the second or third exercise in my program, but with the switch up, we're putting it in first. So we get those pullovers, which are a bit more kind of vertical extension, sagittal plane. Now we've got a horizontal sagittal plane exercise. So
Normally I kind of like leave a couple of reps in the tank for the warm-up so then we can hit our working top end sets with more effective reps. But key thing, we're just trying to get good stretch, decent range of motion, and some control. So easy warm-up, quick plate transition, take about 30 seconds rest. And honestly, I like to do various different ways of warming up. Sometimes it's more repetition based, sometimes it's clusters, sometimes it's isometrics. Like I'll vary it up depending on how the body's feeling. If I'm a little bit more tired, I generally do a cluster warm-up, so leaving plenty of reps in the tank, giving myself a little short bursts of rest. If I'm feeling okay, and which we had a recovery day yesterday, so coming into a back session feeling pretty good, we can just add a plate, add your progression, do a few more reps, add your progression, and just get up to your working load. We're not really looking about fatigue management and things like that just yet. All right, we got one more ad, and then we're in our working sets. Now, as we rest for the working set here, basically, I just want to touch on straps because people get confused with straps. There's like two kind of trains of thought in a sense, whether straps are not training the forearms and grip, so you're losing out on some gains, or whether straps actually, with the given assistance, we're taking out the forearms and grip, which means we can isolate to more muscles, particularly the back in this case. So the thing is, warm-up sets and things like that probably don't need straps. So for your working sets to really squeeze out those extra reps, especially if you're trying to do high volume stuff with a large intensity, then straps are fine. Again, you can still get your grip work done. You can use it in other things like pulls, RDLs, stuff like that on your leg day as well. But don't fully rely on straps. And also, don't not use straps because then you're leaving some gains on the table. So we're going to use some straps. And then the thing that I forgot to mention is we're actually going to add in Kelso shrugs into this set as well. And once we've done the set, I kind of get into a little bit of the reasons why, but there is some controversy surrounding that too. So one thing you probably noticed already is we're going to go a fairly low volume in terms of our reps per set. So in terms of getting that 5 to 8 range at this intensity. And then I mentioned about the Kelso shrug. So the reason why we tack that on at the end is traps are not the limiting factor in this exercise, as is demonstrated by being able to do a few extra Kelso shrugs there. But they are contributing, they are a synergist, so they are still getting worked. So we can generally squeeze out a few extra reps in that position, because now we don't need the lats and other things to pull us into that shoulder extension. So in terms of getting a few extra reps on, instead of going and doing some really heavy Kelso shrugs as a separate exercise where we'd have to load up more, we can kind of save some time and get some in there. Other people will argue, well, is that targeting the kelso and the upper traps and the mid trap as effectively as it could? Now, the thing is, if that's an area where you need to develop, then do the kelso as a separate exercise. It's really that simple. But we take generally 2 minutes rest. That's kind of my normal guideline. And then depending on kind of where your breath's at, depending on your recovery, is where then I decide whether to go shorter or longer. Talking to the camera generally takes it out of me a little bit more than if I'm kind of not recording these sessions. So that's another fun fact. So we're just gonna take some time, regulate our breathing, and then we'll kind of go from there. Now, the one thing I am going to allow for in this set is we're going to get a little bit more thoracic extension to try and squeeze out an extra rep or two compared to the last set. And then we're actually going to then do a back off set for the third set of this one. So we'll reduce the reps down, but then we're going to be super strict in terms of form. So we allowed ourselves some lift off in terms of allowing the chest to come off the pad. And just because it's chest supported doesn't mean chest fixed. So we're still getting those reps in. And what we're actually doing is we're actually in thoracic extension, we're shortening things like the erectors. So they're stabilizing the trunk, but we're taking those out of it a little bit. And then we can still get that nice rounding that you'll see of the shoulders. So we're still getting some decent length in terms of lats and traps. So I don't think that it's necessarily cheating. It's just a variation of the exercise. I don't think that we need to always have our chest absolutely fixed on the pad. So we got another 2 minute rest, and then we're actually going to do a back down set where we'll do a little bit more focus control on the eccentric and do a bit more stricter form at the top as well. Alright, so back down set. Back to one of our warm-up set weights. And then the thing that we're going for here is full run control. That's the two main components. All right, T-bar row is done. Moving to our next exercise. All right, so we got high-low row using the D handle, and the one thing with this, we're gonna do one feeder set. And then we got 2 working sets as well. So immediately, if you're a science-based lifter or so-called, you're gonna be like, wow, he's doing a lot of volume for back here already. And I think that's fine, especially when you become more accommodated to the loads. So I'm gonna increase here and then hit our first working set. So we just obviously hit kind of a horizontal pull and then more of like a 45-degree-ish angle, probably a little bit more honestly with the higher lower row. And so now we're just going to finish off with some vertical pulls on vertical pull downs using more of a neutral mag grip. And then just checking my weights here. And then essentially we either can do 1 or 2 sets here. The dealer's choice is you just hit 1 true set to failure and then you're done. Or we can kind of use some of the more repetition prescription methods. So we can do a cluster set, we can do a drop set, we can do a rest pause. Today I'm actually going to do 1 set to failure, then a little rest pause, a little bit longer than the typical rest pause. I'm going to go 30 seconds and go again at the same weight. Sometimes I drop set it, sometimes, like I said, I just hit that 1 set to failure. Depends on how much juice you've got in the tank. Today, feeling pretty good, so I think I can hit those extra volumes. And again, you might be screaming like, oh, like he already hit lats with T-bar rows and then that high to low row. Why are you hitting lats again now in another extension pattern? And the answer to it is fiber recruitment, right? Motor unit recruitment. We are going to target some slightly different fibers because of the range of motion, because of the amount of shoulder flexion, and we're also getting a little bit of adduction here as well. So any fibers that we potentially didn't recruit in those last 2 exercises, we're probably going to recruit here. So you'll notice that the warm-up to this moment covers that full spread of the lats pretty much, other than maybe a true adduction in the frontal plane, where we could technically put that in those Keenan flap type variation that I have in the warm-up. So we'll hit this. Now, if you do follow along the series, what you'll notice is the next day that we do, that's got some back involvement, we actually will recruit slightly different exercises. So just had to double check the program. So we actually do have a small drop set, so we're actually dropping by 15 pounds, and then it is a kind of a hybrid. It's not really rest pause in a sense, probably more so traditional rest or a cluster set. So we're going to take 45 seconds rest, just enough to catch our breath, and then we're going to go to failure on this one and also hit some of those length and partials. All right. Alright, that's our vertical pulls done for that. Alright, last bicep exercise of the session. So we got the preacher curl. Like to make sure the seat is nice up and high, so we get some decent stability. And then you'll notice that with this one, we do more of a bilateral curl. So there is bilateral force deficit that exists. We did single arm for our Bayesian curls. So this is where, at the end of the session, I just kind of like to get more of like a burnout Will it compensate? Will the right hand, because it's stronger, do a little bit better? You'll notice on one of our other days, we do single arm preacher curls. So we kind of balance that stuff out. So again, we're saying 2 simple sets to failure. Sometimes I'll drop set it, but I'm not going to do that in today's session. So if you do follow along these specific sessions as we're running this block, we will have a drop set from time to time. Maybe we will drop set it. I do typically like to get a little bit higher volume. 100 was what I had programmed today, but I think that was 5-6 reps. I can never really count past 2 whenever I'm in a set, so I have to watch the footage back. But we do take a full 2-minute rest here, so probably gonna just drop down 10-15 pounds-ish, so I will do a modified drop set in a sense. Last set of bicep curl here. All right, we're gonna finish on a set of pullovers and then we're done. The last set here, pullovers. All right, that's session done. All right, so just like that, session done. We hit that first back day. You'll notice that, again, I'm definitely a proponent of slightly higher set volumes and slightly kind of in that intermediate range, I think, in terms of the repetitions that we get within a set. But we are eating more calories right now, which means we are afforded with a little bit more opportunity to do a little bit more within our sessions. Heavy back focus, because that is definitely one of my weak points. That's one of the areas that I am trying to bring up right now. So we're 100% trying to hit back as best we can. So hopefully that session kind of all made sense. I don't think there's too much complexity in there when it comes to the exercise choices and how we're going about prescribing loads and things like that. Again, the one thing that I would say is you might notice that I'm not lifting extremely heavy, but kind of within that 70 to 80% 1 repetition max range, which we know is effective for stimulating growth. Can you go a bit lower? Can you go a bit heavier? Absolutely. I'm still not convinced by the low number of sets, low rep hype in terms of hypertrophy. Yes, you can get a stimulus. Yes, mechanical tension. Yes, leverage, motor unit recruitment, all those different things. But at the moment, I'm not entirely convinced that that is going to be the answer to all of your problems when it comes to muscle growth. So really simple session format. Again, we'll have a push focus day tomorrow, primarily chest, but with some shoulders in there, triceps. The other thing that I'll say about today's session is with the arms, we got about 5 sets of directly targeted bicep work, and then we obviously have our fractional sets that we get from doing our pulls and our back work. We will hit some arms again on leg day as well in a PM session. So it's not really a PPL split, it's kind of more of a PPL, AM and PM on the L day, where AM will be my legs, and then we'll do some upper body accessory work in the PM session. Sometimes on this day I might do some PM legs, kind of glutes, calves, just like areas that I'm not necessarily getting to in my leg sessions across the week as well. But hopefully you enjoyed that. Hopefully it made a lot of sense. Hopefully you got a bit of value out of the session. If you didn't, I appreciate you sticking it out till this long anyway. Keep following along, because we're going to document every single day of prep as it comes along. So there'll be different variety of exercises. There'll be some days where I won't have as much energy. There'll be different programs. There'll be different splits as we get through the prep, and different calories and everything else that comes with it. So hopefully that is an interest of yours, and if it is, make sure you're hitting the subscribe button and that notification button so you get pushed all of the most recent content. And I will see you on tomorrow's video, where we're hitting a push focus day.